Welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome to the show. We're talking movies today, more specifically my favorite movies of 2018. I was lucky enough to watch some really great movies last year, so I wanted to share some of my top picks of the year. And I'm hoping that this video will make you want to watch at least one of these movies that I'm listing here. Could even be a movie that you haven't even heard of. I won't be getting into any spoilers here, so don't worry. But do try to remember that this isn't a top 10 best movies, this is just my personal favorite top 10 movies of the year. Before I start, however, I want to shout out a few honorable mentions. Some movies that just didn't make my list but were absolutely enjoyable for me. To start it off, Deadpool 2 was one of the funniest movies I saw all of last year. The end credit scenes alone are some of the funniest things I ever saw. It also had some really cool fight scenes. I definitely liked it more than the first one. It's an honorable mention for me. So I just watched Bumblebee and I really liked it actually. Some are saying that it's the best Transformers movie ever, but I actually like the first one more.
$5 grand.
No, not paying over 4. Sorry.
Kid, come on, get out the car.
No. You said cars pick their drivers.
Well, sometimes they pick a driver with a cheap ass phone. Out the car.
Next one is Ant-Man and the Wasp, another really funny comic book movie. I don't really know what else to say other than it's got Paul Rudd in it. He's literally like the most likable guy in the world.
I'm gonna throw you in my DeLorean, gun it to 88.
You are a funny motherfucker, man. Jesus. How can you fight with him? Look at his face. I just want to kiss it. I think he's cute.
And then another honorable mention is Sorry to Bother You. Now, if you've already seen it, I'd really like to know what you thought about it in the comments. But for those of you who haven't, it's just like a really absurd premise. And if you feel like watching it, don't look anything up. Don't spoil yourself because it will definitely ruin the movie for you. People have mixed feelings about this movie. I definitely do. And I have to say that there's a part in this movie where you, as a viewer, have to make a decision. No, not like the Bandersnatch movie, but you have to accept this moment that happens in the movie, and if you don't, you're just not really gonna enjoy it. So just roll with it if you can. If you can't, I totally understand. It's in my honorable mentions just because of its originality, because like there will literally never be another movie like this. Okay, so that's it for honorable mentions for now. I will throw out some more throughout the rest of this top 10 list. I just didn't want to reveal some of the big name movies that I'm leaving out just yet. But without further ado, let's get into it. So for number 10, to start us off, I really loved Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado. If you haven't seen either of the Sicario movies, I definitely recommend them. They are amazing. And I really wanted to put Sicario at my number 10 spot, but there was a movie that came out of nowhere this year, and that was Upgrade. I had no idea what this movie was about going into it, and I had zero expectations. And I remember I came out of the movie theater with like the biggest smile on my face. It reminded me of movies like John Wick and The Equalizer, but it played more like a really action-packed episode of Black Mirror with like really dope fight scenes. It's also got this really great dark comedy aspect to it. It's actually very similar to the film Venom, which I was also pleasantly surprised by last year. But it's done a lot better, and you still get Tom Hardy. Or at least someone who looks a lot like Tom Hardy. And now I love horror movies. They're the reason why I became so obsessed with film. Growing up, I think I watched the movie Scream like at least 100 times, and I will gladly watch it another 200 times. There were some good scary movies that came out this year, like Halloween and The Nun. And then there were some really great ones like The Quiet Place, which I loved. And as much as I wanted to put it as my number 9, I had to go with a film that as soon as it was over, I wanted to see it all over again. And that was Hereditary. Hereditary was another one of those films that just caught me by absolute surprise this year and left me incredibly shook. It's one of those movies that make you say, what the hell is going on, like throughout the entire film. And it's not just scary, it's uncomfortably scary. This is one of the most terrifying films I've seen in my entire life. Now, horror might be my favorite genre, but comedy is a very close second. And a lot of the comedies that came out in 2018 were a lot better than I expected them to be. For example, Tag was a lot better than I thought it'd be, as was the movie A Simple Favor, which was funny, but I was surprised that it was a good mystery film too. But there were two comedies that came out this year that I just loved, and to choose between both of them is just really hard to do. But Game Night is my number 8 and favorite comedy of 2018. Blockers put up a really good fight, but Game Night was just too damn good not to put in my top 10 list. The plot is great. It's essentially a game night that goes wrong, and then there's just so much else going on top of that. There are twists that you don't see coming, especially because it's a comedy. It just goes to show how well written that this movie is and why it's one of my favorites. Also has one of the funniest performances of the year with Jesse Plemons as the police officer. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. For my next pick, I went with a thriller, something that just kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. So at my number 7, I have the movie Searching. Searching is about a father who is desperate to find his teenage daughter who has recently gone missing. Although the way that this story is told is through a computer screen. So you'll see a lot of YouTube videos, FaceTime calls, and security footage. I've only ever seen one other film use this type of format, and it was nowhere near as good as this movie. Kind of similarly to one of my favorite films, Get Out, you're slowly getting this information that you need if you just pay attention to all the clues. It's done very smart. You really invest yourself into this movie, the story, and these characters. I don't want to say too much about it, but the payoff is definitely worth it. I think everyone should go see this movie. I think everyone should go see every movie off this list, honestly. And that brings me to my next movie. So at number 6, I wanted to go with a really good coming-of-age film. Now, coming-of-age films can be anything from The Breakfast Club to American Pie. And because I'm still a fairly young guy, these films resonate with me the most because they're the most relatable. Movies like this remind us of our youth, the good and the bad. The good parts, like partying with your friends and being excited about the future, was shown in films like Blockers, while the bad stuff, like the awkwardness of trying to fit in and just the overall cringiness of what we used to be like, was shown in films like 8th Grade. All of these movies are great, but for my number 6 pick, I went with a movie that was a combination of just everything, and that was Love, Simon. Love, Simon is a story about a kid who has yet to come out to his family and friends, but starts chatting online with another anonymous, closeted kid from the same high school. It's really funny, it's got a ton of heart, it's even got a bit of mystery to it because the entire movie is us trying to find out who exactly Simon has been talking to. I think this movie is great, and honestly I believe it's going to be an instant classic for this genre of film. So moving on to my number 5 pick, I chose the sequel to one of my favorite movies back in 2015, Creed 2. Just like the first Creed and the Rocky movies before it, it's another inspiring underdog story with great characters and fan-pleasing moments. I've always loved the Rocky movies. The training montages alone get me super hyped up and make me feel hella motivated for like at least the next 24 hours. But Creed continues to prove that it's just as good with great writing and even better acting. It's also produced by one of my favorite filmmakers today, Ryan Coogler, who also made Fruitvale Station, which is incredible. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, as well as Black Panther, which I'm just gonna say it right now, it didn't make my top 10 list. But I did like the movie, a lot actually, and I understand that it is a great achievement for black filmmakers. It made $1.3 billion at the box office worldwide, and is even nominated for a few Oscars this year. But I think it might be a little overrated as a film just because of the noise surrounding it. Personally, Black Panther isn't my favorite MCU movie. I can't say it would even make my top 5, but it is a great movie nonetheless. I just like Creed 2 more. So there were 2 dramas that came out towards the end of the year that featured some really great musical performances, Bohemian Rhapsody and A Star is Born. Both of these films are really good, and both of these films are nominated for Oscars. Bohemian Rhapsody follows the story of Queen, but more specifically lead singer Freddie Mercury. We watch how the band created some of its biggest hits and how they launched themselves into one of the biggest bands of all time, while also taking a deep dive into the adventurous life of Freddie Mercury and the ups and downs of his career. In A Star is Born, we see just that. A star being born in a new life of fame and success for someone who was just once a regular person living a normal life. Both films have similarities. We watch these characters ascend into superstardom and watch the challenges they face once they've reached it. Now, as for A Star is Born, I think it's a lot better written, and the acting might even be a little better. But the story just got to be a little too predictable, which I've said before isn't always a bad thing. And now you might be thinking, well, if you know the story of Freddie Mercury, Bohemian Rhapsody might be a little too predictable too, right? But for me, I just kept finding myself getting more and more excited about what was going to happen next. And it all just builds up to my favorite movie ending that I saw this year. Both movies are really good, but my number 4 goes to Bohemian Rhapsody. My number 3 favorite movie of 2018 is BlacKkKlansman, directed by Spike Lee. It follows the true story of a black police detective who infiltrates the KKK in the early 1970s. It manages to be really hysterical and very serious at the same time. The acting, the writing, the characters, everything is just done so well. We talked about how much of an impact Black Panther made for filmmaking and fans of color, but this movie is just as important, especially for the African American culture. And the movie came out at the perfect time to shed light on social issues that have remained prevalent for the last 50 years. Not only is this one of my favorite films of the year, but it's my pick to win Best Picture at the Oscars. Please go see this movie, it is worth the watch. So there were some pretty good animated films that came out this year, so I've heard. I only watched 2 of them. One of them was The Incredibles 2, which was pretty good. It was funny, it was charming. I even think I liked it better than the first one. But it was nowhere near as good as my second favorite film of the year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Originally, when I was first making this list, I had put it at my number 3, just because I had just recently watched this movie, and I just didn't want to put it so high based off recency bias. But the more I thought about it, I thought, I really liked BlacKkKlansman. But 10 years from now, I still think that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is gonna be one of my favorite films of all time. It is that freaking good. I love everything about this movie. I love the character of Miles Morales. I love that he's multiracial. I love how the movie looks. Like, it really looks like a comic book movie. All the characters in this movie are really good, the heroes and the villains. It's funny, it's sad, it's exciting. The only thing I hate about this movie is that it didn't come out when I was a little kid, but I'm really glad I have it now. Spider-Man is my number 2 favorite film of the year, which only leaves us with one more film, and that is Avengers: Infinity War. I had been waiting for this movie for so long. I had such high expectations going into this movie, and when I saw it, everything was just exactly what it needed to be. Everything from the first Avengers to Black Panther has just been leading up to this moment. And if there's anything I love more than movies, it's TV shows. And the MCU is one of the best shows I've ever seen, which makes this movie one of the best season finales of all time. It's got great comedy, great action, great character development, and a great story. It has me really anxious to see what happens next. And now, I know Avengers Endgame is only a few months away, but man, this movie is going to be really hard to top. It is easily my favorite MCU movie, and it is my number 1 movie of 2018.
Are you yawning in the middle of this while I'm breaking it down? Huh? Did you hear what I said?
But that's my list. I'm sorry for such a long video, but hopefully I gave you a few new movies to add to your Netflix queue. Now, of course, I didn't watch every movie in 2018. Here are a few notable ones that I missed out on, but I will go back and check out some of these movies. So if I missed out on one of your favorite movies, maybe I just didn't get to it yet. But let me know if I missed any other good movies, and click that red subscribe button if you want to see more of me, and comment down below what your favorite movie of 2018 was. Thank you so much for watching, and
Hasta la vista, baby.